Good evening, everybody, and those who watch this video later at whatever time you decide to watch it. It might be daytime, I don't know. With that being said, me and the DM Jade over here will be talking about homebrewing and modules. He, at the moment, does mainly homebrewing. That's where he's comfortable with. I, at the moment, do mainly modules because it's what I'm used to of late. So how we're going to break this down is he's going to take the side of the homebrew, and I'm going to take the side of the module, and we're going to have a conversation about them and for the pros and for the cons. If anybody who's watching this, you know where the link is, please join us. For those who don't know where the link is, come talk to us later. All right. So let's start with homebrewing. How long have you been doing homebrewing? Let's start with that.
Oh man. Okay. So, God. Well, I've been playing 24 years, give or take, and I've been game mastering for probably 20 of those 24 years. Um, Off and on, back and forth with friends here and there. And I've also guest DM'd in other games as well. But yeah, 20 years behind the screen, I would say.
All right. Now, the reason why I said you will speak homebrew because most of our relationship as friends, you have mainly been doing homebrew. It seems to be your strong suit. Uh, Not saying you're OCD or anything, but you like to have control.
Well, that's even an OCD thing. It's definitely a control issue. No, I mostly homebrew because I enjoy telling stories. Um, it's one of those things that was instilled into me in early life. See, I was as a kid, I didn't just listen to lullabies going to sleep, before the ages of like 5 or 6 or even 10. I listened to my mother tell me stories. So the creative spark really got instilled into me at a really really young age, and from that it developed into wanting to tell stories. Now I hadn't experienced D&T until I was like 13, so I didn't know the storytelling potential within a game until then. um, so for me, and then this is where my buddy Reese comes in, and he got me into D&D, early on. And the stories that could be told, and the characters that you could play, and the things you could do is really what drove me forward, and like embracing the hobby as I did. Because I had so many stories I wanted to tell, and I wanted to have my friends experience and be part of. So that to me was really my anchoring point into the hobby.
Okay. Well, on my side of this, I've mainly been sitting down at his table for the last decade, almost a little bit over a decade. Um, there was a decade, and he's like I said, he normally does home brewing. I've been at a few other people's tables who do modules. I do modules. Not that I am, I've heard people in other chats that we're in say that doing modules is lazy ass work. I disagree with it because there's sometimes you have to do minor changes on the fly. If something just does not click the way it should, and that's always party by party. You can't, as much as we all want to jump on a railroad on a train going down from A point to A point B, every time something a boulder, a log, something unseen is going to happen. So you have to be, Johnny on the spot. I prefer modules just because it's you take, in my opinion, it takes more time to do home brewing than it does with modules. I have everything I need for the most part with the module. I have the bones, I got the muscles, I got the meat. All I have to worry about is if my player is going to go do A, B, or C, and that's not that hard compared to uh, home brewing. Now I've been doing modules for about 6 years now. I as a paid DM, we do modules, and with my friends, I do modules because, like I said, it is just easier for me to make sure they're having a good time. And to me, that's more important than what I want. Well, not what I want, but it's a thing. So let's start with the pros and cons of home brewing. Then we'll switch over to the pros and cons of modules, and We'll just build this ladder.
Okay, so some of the pros of homebrewing games, individual stories or your homebrewed modules. The pros to it is you have control over most of where the story goes. Now, to that's not to say you have control over what the players do. No, you have control over what hooks you throw into the player's path and see which ones they pick up. Not every hook thrown is going to be picked up by the players. Some players just don't want to do certain things, and that's some of the pitfalls with home brewing and modules. Actually, some players just don't want to follow that hook, so now you're stuck with now I'm getting to the con. Now you're stuck with, well, what do I do if a player doesn't want to pick up that hook? Well, now you have to figure out A, what is your player into, and B, if they're into XYZ, how do I throw a hook that's going to involve XYZ? So that, pro and con there. To me, one of the benefits of homebrewing games has been I get to tell the stories I want, the kind of the way I want, and I get to interact with my friends in such a way that I can be creative and they can be creative, and we can tell the story together. I'm very much a co-op kind of player. Like I don't mind competitive play, but I really prefer to be working with my friends rather than against my friends. And to me, homebrew just makes that easy. I'm wanting the players to go this way, so I put clues and hints and hooks to kind of lead them that way. Not necessarily on a railroad. I have made that mistake on a number of occasions, and young game masters are going to make that mistake. It happens. Like you have. Now I'm getting back into the cons of things. You have the story you want to tell. And you want to tell it a specific way. Maybe it's based on a movie. Maybe it's based on a book. Maybe it's based on, just your experience as a player, and you're wanting to run in the same world, telling the story of that character through the eye, and you wanting to share that character's, experiences with your friends. Well, that is a pitfall. And I say that because nobody likes being on the railroad. Nobody really enjoys having zero choice or having their choice not mean anything. So that's definitely a big drawback from, I want to say, homebrewing a railroad. You want to kind of steer away from that. But how do you tell a story without it being a railroad? Well, again, this is where those creative things, creative clues and hooks that you can place in their way kind of tells the story for them. Like, as soon as they start picking up clues, they're like, oh, we're meant to go this direction because of this thing. If we don't do this, what happens? And you let them come up with their own consequences in a way. Now I'm getting back into the pro side of things. As your players experience the different hooks and things that you have laid out for them, they might, come up with something that's completely different direction than you were thinking originally. You can take that and polish it into, well, if you don't do this, you already said it, this is going to happen. Well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and write that down, and I'm going to expand on that later. So, I mean, that's definitely a pro side of things. You're not limited by the text on a page of what the consequences of action or inactions are. So, yeah, I mean, that's to me, some of the pros and cons of homebrewing. If anyone wants to chime in on that in the comments field, I'd be happy to respond.
Okay, the pros and the cons for modules. A lot of the pros. Let's start with the pros. A lot of the story is written. The story is written. you're not having to be the author of said campaign. You just have to be the narrator of said campaign. You have to make sure the players are catching all the hooks, as DM Jade has put it. Now, with that being said, some things are more simpler. You don't have to worry about what monsters or what they're going to fight. Sometimes you have to, now to the con, sometimes you have to worry about the numbers because you quite never know how that, like a module, say 15 goblins need to be in a room, no, so in a space that is X by X. Well, you have only 4 players. The module is meant for a set number most times. And so if you don't have the numbers that went, sometimes it can overpower the party. And just because the power of the not villain, but the power of not the power of the number, the numbers just don't work in the player's direction. Now, prep and everything else up, yeah, I recommend you prep when doing a module, but the prep is also a whole lot simpler for modules than it is for homebrewing. Because as I said, all you're doing is being the narrator. You're making sure everybody shows up, sits down, you get the story going, you describe the room, you describe the forest, you describe the dungeon, you describe what they're seeing, if that be NPC or monster, or if they just come across a horde of dragon gold for whatever reason. I don't remember there being a dragon in the story, but apparently there's a horde. So, hi Ashley. So I don't know if I'm trying to give as much as a DMJ did on the pros and cons. I think the easiest thing to say, the most simplest thing is all you're doing is being the narrator. You're having to make simple adjustments on the fly, but it's not as you spent hours writing everything down or days trying to figure out the next part of the campaign. And the player decides, you know what? I want to get off this train. That village over there looks pretty nice. And hey, look, there's somewhere I can get a drink and possibly get laid. Let's do that. Where a module is basically pretty set in stone. I mean, they could do stuff like that, but there's enough hooks from me as a DM, at least with the Rise of the Rune Lord, that drag them right back into it. At the current moment, that would be cultists. So, actually, let's talk about villain creation for somewhat between the two. With homebrewing, you have X, and with modules, you have X, but they're two different. They're very much different, where you get to choose the randomness, where I am told what to throw for the most part.
Well, yes, no. So, while with homebrew, I can, craft my villains the way I want them. I can give them the powers and the abilities or loot that I want them to have. I can definitely do that, but it's not just that simple. I have to keep in mind that whatever the villain is, it has to be thematically appropriate to the story that I'm, telling. And yes, I'm going to say story multiple times throughout this. Get over it.
Drink.
But if my villain or my monsters are not thematically appropriate, why are they there? And I'm one of those weird guys who goes, "Hey, why is this thing here? Why does it do this?" As a player, I will always ask those questions, and I'm the kind of player that most unprepared game masters really hate, because I'm the guy who's asking, well, why? If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask that question. So it had better make some modicum of sense in some direction or not. No, as far as villain crafting goes, and I've done this for modules as well, because I do occasionally run modules. I will craft a villain that is thematically appropriate to the part of a story that is being told. Or I will rebuild a villain, in the case of modules, that is going to be a challenge for the party, but still remain thematically appropriate. Now, I've run some modules where I don't know why, but the writer decided, and they fight a beholder with no lead up whatsoever. And I'm like, well, why is there a beholder here? Like, why on earth would that even be in this instance? So I either strip that out and replace it entirely, or I start putting plot devices in along the way that leads up to a beholder so the players aren't like going, but why? So as far as like the villains go, though, like they're the motives and whatnot, that's something I put a lot of thought into for homebrews. Is I will craft my villain around a goal. Every villain has to have a goal, and it should not be something so superfluous as I want to rule the world. Why do you want to rule the world? Just to rule it? I mean, that's like having your cake but not being able to eat it. If you want your cake and eat it too, you have to have motives, and you have to have a more overarching reason than just I want to rule the world. So I really get into the nitty gritty of my villains and craft them around a purpose. Why do you want to rule the world? Because I know what's coming, and I'm trying to save as many lives as possible. Or why do you want to rule the world? Because a lot of kingdoms are doing really stupid things, and I want them to all stop. Those are to me more valid reasons for a villain to get involved in villainy in the first place. Not just, oh, I just want to be rich. Like, okay, that's pretty much every one of my player characters up to this point. I just want to be rich. Okay, well, congratulations, you just graduated villain college. If that's what you want, that's cool. It's very uninteresting. We'll move on from there. Anyway, so villain crafting, Cigar.
Villain crafting modules. Like I said, most of the villains I run across for Rise of the Rune Lord or any other module has already been printed, has already been laid out, has already been. But I do have to sometimes change things up, especially when you're cross systeming,
Cross engine. You're
engine.
dropping the D&D engine in a Pathfinder game. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens.
So I mean, I'm not complaining. It's fun. It's just, for example, there was a for a villain. For example, you already brought up Beholder, so I'll go with that one. They were in a hospital asylum, and they were having to deal with necromancers. And Pathfinders does not have the right to use beholders.
Paizo, yeah.
Yeah, they just don't. Yeah. But 5e does. Dungeons and Dragons, that's their little baby. Granted, I'd be giving it adoption papers, but that's just me, ugly little bastard. Anyways, so I'm like, you know what, the party is this level, and I feel kind of honored tonight, and they're necromancers. Let's see what kind of things in there. I'm like, and everybody knows what a zombie looks like. If you played this, if you've done fantasy or whatever long enough, you've seen a zombie. So I'm like, well, let's drop a zombie beholder in there. Why? Because the necromancer has been screwing around with dead things. And as Dean Winchester says, you do not play with dead things. And so they're searching the room, they're searching everything, and one of the players, the rogue, is like, I'm going to sneak ahead and start opening up doors to see what's in there, because there might be loot. He goes in there, being a 5e player. He's like, ooh, da. Wait, what's that? And I described the scene to him as a drooling, flying, one-eyed creature with tendrils of eyes turns around at you. And the other player who's done Rise of the Rune Lord with Pathfinder is like, wait, that's a beholder. They're not in Paizo. I'm like, you're right, but we're running 5e. So with modules, what I'm trying to say is just because the villains on paper are one way doesn't mean they have to be that way. You can somewhat change them out for because your player, if you know it, dropping a lich at first level is going to kill your party, but that's what the module says. Then whoever wrote the module is an idiot. So sometimes you have,
Or exceptionally mean, and it's not supposed to be a combat encounter.
yeah, but players normally don't run. Or look up.
Yeah.
So once again, the monsters in the module are already laid out. But as a DM, as me, I can switch them out for something a little bit more reasonable. It not being a lich to it being a zombie or a zombie beholder to whatever. So 80% of the villain crafting is already done for me. I just have the 20% to say to myself, is this reasonable? Does this number of orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, or whatever fit for the party we're running, the party that's in there? So that's the benefit of modules. A lot of the legwork is already taken out, done for you. You just got to be a good DM and realize, is this what I want to run, or not? So.
And when I was running Wrath of the Righteous, I would oftentimes have to completely rebuild some of my villains, and you guys had no idea. I would spend an entire week rebuilding 3, 4, 8, or maybe even 10 monsters out of a module, because either A, the challenge that they were supposed to pose was laughable because the power curves were just way out of whack, or B, it was just going to be a raffle stomp. There was no thematic reason why that monster was there, and it was not going to present a challenge. So I would oftentimes spend my entire weekend rebuilding monsters in Wrath of the Righteous, especially after Module 3, I think. Yeah, after Module 3, I had to rebuild a lot of the monsters. The one pit fight or arena fight that you guys got into, that you chose, mind you, I had built it knowing you were going to choose this. Like, you guys could have not done the arena fight, but you chose it. But I had rebuilt the monster because he was supposed to have, oh God, I can't remember what feats he was supposed to have, but it would have been a cakewalk for you guys. So I had rebuilt him entirely from the ground up to use his opponent's strengths against their allies. I had rebuilt him so that anytime you take a swing at him, he makes a combat maneuver check of some kind to redirect the attack towards an adjacent enemy. So that was all me doing that. That wasn't the module at all.
Well, before I introduce Shadow into the mix, I just want to say, in that arena fight, my biggest challenge was not the monsters, but a co-player, because as some DM, mainly that guy.
Yeah, because I rebuilt the monster to go, oh, hey, you're going to be a ranged attack? Yeah, no, I'm not going to let you be a ranged attack and pelt me from a distance. And when the melee guy closes a distance, I'm going to make him attack you. It just made sense. Welcome, Shadow.
How's it going, guys?
Good. How was the graduation?
Very, very cool. My son is one of the more popular kids with the teachers, at least. Obviously got a fair number of friends. Got they gave out 5 by literacy awards, and he was one of the few to get it. And like you guys might have heard, he's also getting an award. Well, not just an award, but red carpet treatment in Hollywood next week or the week after for a movie he directed at school. And he's a great kid. Obviously I'm a little biased. He's my kid, but and he's still there actually right now because a friend of his in the upper grades is graduating there, and he wanted to hang out with his friends. So,
That's cool.
I'm back home.
So tonight's topic is modules versus homebrews for the most part. Used in multiple different times that you've been a almost full time DM over player for the
Yep,
last
for last 25 years, yeah.
25 years. Do you have a favorite between the two, module
Oh,
versus homebrew?
yeah, I haven't run a module in, well, that's not true. I run one module regularly called Caliban from Arduin, and it's more or less homebrew at this point, but it is one of the few that I do run. Otherwise, every single aspect of my campaigns is homebrew. I'm God, it's my world, and I'm going to do what I want, period. A little bit of a control freak there. Yeah, I know. But
So
that way I'm never wrong. I'm always right. And I had some bad experiences running modules back in the day of TSR where people would own the modules, know them back and forward, and then pretend they didn't. And
yeah,
mind you, this was back in my high school days, and people were, D&D for us was still brand new, with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons being the game of choice, which is weird because I know so many people, online and whatnot, talk about the what we would call expert or basic, and that was never really a big thing for us. It was always Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or nothing at all. And then when second edition came, most of my friends still played Advanced with mixes of AD&D, which I did too. I liked a lot about AD&D because there were a lot of little fixes, but for the most part, to me, it was still the same game. Almost, as far as I could tell, 90% of the rules were the same. Just some cool little tweaks on characters like the thief, being able to choose where the percentages went, the specialization in wizard, schools. Unfortunately, they killed my favorite, one of my favorites, which is the bard and the barbarian and the cavalier / paladin. They went kind of backwards on those, but otherwise it was AD&D first or second. Excuse me, it was all the same to us. But I really enjoyed the modules back in the day. The old TSR modules, they were plenty of room for add your own stuff. Some were pretty memorable, some were kind of but I stopped using modules 35 years ago.
fair enough. Fair enough. Now, it looks like I might have to find somebody else to join on me because it feels like I'm about ready to be tag team by two purists. I'm wanting a module. Uh, come
Well,
on, Baron, where are you? I know you're
how long
watching.
you been dungeon mastering? How long you been dungeon mastering?
Me, less than you two. As a paid one, going on 4 years. As a
Okay.
non-paid one, I don't know, 7 or 8, barely.
Have you ever made your own world?
No, I use other people's.
Once you make your own world, you probably will fall in love with it. It's your world to do whatever you want. And for me, there's nothing quite like it, to be in complete control. You're never wrong. You're always right. I mean, it's your world, Maybe you might mess up on some rules, but there are no rules when it comes to making your own world. You're God. You're in charge. It's all on you. You succeed or fail in the way you create your world and suck players in and get them to also fall in love with you. There's so many. There's a reason why so many people love the other worlds, whichever ones you play regularly, because they did a good job on it. Take a world that you like, fix what you don't, make things brand new out of your own creativity. There's really nothing like being able to make your own world, whether you want to use graph paper. I honestly, I just use plain old typing paper and I draw it like really kind of primitively, comically almost. Make it look like how, I could draw pretty well if I really wanted to, but I draw it the way I figure primitive people would draw it. I don't use hexes. I don't use graphs. I just real print. Mountain is just a upside down V with some shady lines, white at the top because it's snowy, volcanoes, forests, oceans, whatever. But I just let my imagination go wild. A lot of times I don't even draw but 3 or 4 sheets of map paper out, and they don't know the rest of the world. I don't draw it till they get close to the edges. There's no reason, and I build it as I come up with new ideas. I don't try to bang it all out at once. The very first worlds I ever made, you can tell which page is first because of the age of the paper. You can literally start to see it yellowing versus other pages. And my most famous game world actually has these. Back in the day, TSR put out these. You remember those rub-on transfers where you rub the pencil on like a thing and then it leaves behind a sticker? Well, I had sets of those from Dungeons and Dragons and TSR, and now those things, if you try to buy them, are like $50 for 10 stickers. It's crazy priced. But I went and put them on my map, and I found others from cereal boxes with like jungle animals and forest animals, and I'd put them on there because I didn't want to draw, a zebra or a lion, and to show lions live over here, zebras live over there, orcs live over here, stuff like that. And you don't have to be a great artist to do it. There's all kinds of ways of cheating. You can do it on the computer. I like to, hands-on. I used to use crayons to color my maps. Some of them are, shaded with crayons. Others I use colored pencils, which I prefer now because it's got more of a realistic, tone to it, as if, that's what they used, in the old days. They didn't have paints, they might have used charcoal or berries or whatever. And, you'd be surprised. Players aren't asking for, production quality, high tech maps. They just want to know, okay, it's so many inches to the
Your
next
players
city.
may not be.
Yeah, I was about to say, Nate spoiled us.
I like presenting, A grade material. I can't help it.
That you know what? If you were to take mine and try to improve them with modern technology, you might be able to do it well and make it look really good. But mine's got my own style to it, I guess. And I don't think I would personally like it. Other people would, but if they saw what I did, they might be like, yeah, maybe, because sometimes it brings a little, down to earthiness to it. Sometimes the more professional things are, they almost take away from the way things used to be, at least for most of my players. They're pretty old and none of them are artists, and they're like, oh my god, that's cool, but in today's day, I realize there's a lot of people out there with more talent in different fields compared to the way it used to be. We were, there's a reason why I'm the only DM in my group, because nobody else, had the time or the desire to do it. But sure enough, tell them there's a game, they're ready to play. Nowadays, people have a lot more time for this sort of thing than back in the day when I was, just getting started. For example, at my high school, we were the only ones who played. Literally, there was a group of about 6 or 8 of us out of about 1,000, high school students, and that was it. There were other schools nearby and other kids, because we all would then meet at a gaming hall where, there would be kids from different schools going and playing. But, some of them we knew from different high schools. Some of them we knew from our school. Some of them we didn't know where they came from. They just showed up. And of course, most of the players there were twice, if not 3 times our age, which was really weird, playing, being 14 years old, dungeon mastering for 40-year-olds. But I'd fill my tables at the because I used to get paid to play like Connell here, and I'd be I'd have a table of 20 different players, and there'd be 4, 5, 6 other dungeon masters just looking at me like, why do you get all the players? Well, I don't know. It was just
Well,
luck. And
some people have a swag with their how they do things. I mean, like I said, DM James, when we were roommates at one juncture of time, twice
You,
technically, all in all, but we were roommates at
you
one time.
how so? Like college or
He was nice. I needed a couch to surf on for a few
okay,
for a
okay,
while.
okay, okay. You don't
And
have to
once,
get too personal. I thought it was like a. At first, I thought you meant like at a con or something, but that's way cool, dude. I mean, I know DM James is a great guy. Now I know he's an even better
no,
guy.
DM Jade.
Oh, I thought you said DM James. I'm like, oh, okay,
I thought you
sorry.
said
No,
James as
no,
well.
no,
Okay,
no.
okay,
DM
sorry.
Jade.
No, you're a great guy too. Don't get me wrong.
You don't have to lie. It's fine.
No. It's just, I mean, if you think about it, if you heard it that way, you'd be equally as impressed. Thinking that it's like, wow. I mean, I know he's a nice guy. Of course, you're a great guy. We've talked before. Come on.
I mean, honestly, there was a while where we were greeting each other with "Hey, schmuck,"
Putts.
because our friendship just kind of mirrors grumpy old men from time to time, which is pretty cool in its own route, I guess. But
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. If you can't actually be like that with your friends, then they're, in my opinion, they're not really friends, or they're, too much of a candy ass to take a little ribbing, and you need to get new friends.
oh, trust me, between me and Jade, we know a few candy asses that can't put up with our sense of humor.
Yeah, it's a shame, but the times we're in, it's also not much of a surprise.
So let's go to groups. Let's the next question being groups for homebrew versus modules. Now, I've had players walk away from my table because they prefer homebrew over module, and I've had other people prefer modules over homebrew. I don't know if this has ever happened to you two, but has anybody, midway through a campaign more or less said, "Hey, this is just not my bag"? Without saying
Yes.
any names. Without saying any names. I know.
Yes, I have actually had that happen in both homebrew and module play, where I'll get to a certain part of it and they're just not feeling it anymore. So they're like, "Yep, I'm done," and they walk away from the table. It's happened in it actually happened in Wrath of the Righteous. Either things just didn't jive with them, or they just weren't feeling the module or didn't like the game that I was running. I've also had it at homebrew table where they thought I was being too railroady, and I might have been at the time. And that again, I've admitted to it before that I have run some railroads, not necessarily on purpose, but I had a vision of where things were supposed to go, and I was trying to get my players there, and it just didn't work out well. So I've had players leave for that reason as well. I was being a little too pushy in a specific direction that they didn't want to go. Yeah, so yes, I have had players walk out on me.
Yeah, same here. But I mean, I out of literally the hundreds of players that I've had, it's just a numbers game at that point. You'll eventually have people leave, but I count the time at the game hall that I used to work at. That was all a learning experience. From the time I was 14 to 16 or 17, I gamed for hundreds of people that were a lot of them one-time players. Some of them the whole 2 years. Some of them off and on. Some come and stay for a while, then leave. Life happens, things like that. But once I got out of that, I had about 12 to 20 regular players in different groups off and on. One guy died, a couple people moved away. I don't count that as people just up and leaving. I did have like 3 people basically up and leave. One guy who up and left basically wanted to destroy the whole group because we were playing at his house. And because he didn't get to be the star of the show, no one was allowed to play anymore. And I'm like, or at least at his place, because we had no other place to play. And it was just completely childish. The guy had one trick. Every character he ever made was the same, whether male or female. 2 swords, fighter. I'm the star of the show. You don't like it, then we're not playing, or I'm not playing. And the other two, they were a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they just, for whatever reason, the other players weren't showing up as much, and they're like, well, if it's just going to be the three of us, we're just going to find something else to do. And I'm like, don't blame you. If other people aren't going to show up, I got other things to do too. I prefer a larger game than a one-on-one or two-on-one. You got to have at least, as far as I'm concerned, 3 minimum for it to be a decent game. Otherwise, especially if it's one player or two, you feel like, well, I can't kill anybody. Otherwise, all we're going to be doing is making up characters, every other couple of games. And that's boring. I mean, it's not our job to keep them alive, but it is our job to keep them at the table. There's a big difference. And if you can't do that, then you don't have a game. And so you've got to, sometimes pull your punches or give them a clue you wouldn't normally give a bigger group, and I'm not the kind of dungeon master to hold anybody's hand and walk them through just basically their fantasies. That's not my job. That's we use dice for a reason, and it is a game. It's not me providing some players with therapy or entertaining them. I'm not Alexa or Netflix. I want to see I want to see where this goes. I don't want you guys just to tell me where it goes. That's why I don't like certain styles of play as much as maybe some other people do. No names mentioned. I really want to mention the name, but I'm not gonna. Yeah. So
I've had, being a paid DM is where I run into it the most. Because if I'm doing society or adventure league, it's basically written on the door. These are modules. These will be a one-shot module that you'll get a piece of paper at the end of it, and you get 4 pieces of paper in your character levels. And these are normally just one-shot modules that build up for society and adventure league. Now, unless I'm doing a big module like Curse of Strahd or somebody else, not one of the big 5e books or Rising Lord, where it's broken up by chapter. Now, I don't fault the people that want homebrew games, because there's more ways to spread your wings in the homebrew game than there is a module, special for the player. Now, I will never hold that against.
Yeah, once you, like I said, once you make your own world, or even if you use, one of the bigger campaign or gaming, prefabbed worlds where you can let them sandbox and let them go wherever the heck they want, and everybody gets to stretch certain creative, muscles that way. You'll find the desire to run modules wane over the months and years to come, because it for you, you're still you're still in the early stages of dungeon mastering. You still have things to learn, techniques to pick up, and your own actual style to master.
No, that's fair. Now,
you'll get there. You'll look back on this conversation maybe, or this video 10 years from now, and you'll be like, "The old guy was right." You'll find your own way, and you'll be amazed, because when you get that really core group of players that stick with you for a fair long amount of time, you'll know that you've succeeded, because they want to play more than you do. That's when you're doing a good job. You've made something, and you can go, "I did that," like I did that.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll know it's all on you. Until then, you're going to always be running the risk that I did of having unscrupulous players go out and buy the module you have, and then oh, let's do this. Oh wow, gosh, this guy makes all.
So far, so good. This was the first little hiccup.
Yeah, I think his internet just cut out.
When you find out your player was basically cheating. There's not a lot of ways to cheat in this game,
Well,
I think we lost you there for a moment.
Yeah. It sucks when you find out your players are cheating. Let's put it that way.
No, that's
And
fair. That's why I mean, I as a player, I prefer homebrew over module for the most part. I mean, I'll sit down if I like the DM. I'll sit down and he can run whatever the hell he wants, and I'll still play. Just hang out with my friends.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
okay, so we did villain crafting earlier. We'll
Missed
circle
that.
back
I
to
was
that here.
watching, but I was just getting home.
Yeah, I will
Uh,
circle back to that here in a second.
cool.
Um, we did okay. So classes. Now with modules, I can say no. That the gunslingers are hundreds of thousands away from where you're at here at the uh, uh, wound the
World
world
wound.
wound.
Yeah,
So it doesn't work that way. At least that's what my DM told me. Um,
you're damn right.
so as a module, I could say no to certain classes, especially when that module was out way before the other class came out. So it wasn't, weighed, measured, and found wanting or non-wanting when it was produced. So with homebrewing versus that way, are there classes out there that you just find that don't work for your homebrewing world because it's just out of scope? Where it being bring guns in or artificers for those who play 5e or whatever in older editions.
Who do you want to start?
You apparently you're jumping all over that. You're like a
So,
newborn puppy
yes.
just on its pecker.
Yes, so even in homebrew, I will occasionally, and this will actually depend on where the players start at in the world, as well as the initial hooks of the game. If I'm starting in, let's say, the country of Terran. Now this is I'm going back to my own homebrew world. Terran is a very militaristic, very advanced civilization. They have steam power in a lot of things. So if I'm starting a group in Terran, they're going to have access to likely Dresden needle guns. They're probably going to have access to steam powered trains to take them from place to place. Yes, the horse and buggy are still a thing. Cars are still a little ways off, but they have access to higher technology. So that means they're going to have access to
I'll be at that.
certain specific classes that would not be accessible in, let's say, I'm just going to pick one at random, the Elven community, which is lagging behind in the technology curve, but they have a lot of high magic. They don't have the gunslingers in the Elven area of Baelsar. But what they do have is wizards who can do fantastic things. So will I allow someone to play who's playing an elf to play one of those, really awesome wizards? Yeah, probably. But if they're starting in Terran, they have to have a really, really solid reason for why they're there. So yes, I will, even in homebrew games, restrict access to specific classes or abilities or even spells that don't fit in the area, at least on the onset. Now, if they go to an area that has those things, has people or NPCs in the world that can do certain things, I'm not going to say you can't learn it. If you want to take 3-4 months to learn some kind of martial arts, go for it. I'm not going to stop you, but it's going to be time away from it's not going to be at the table that you do that. No. That's going to be your character steps out of the story and we replace him with someone else for a short time, or everyone takes a break for 3 months and does whatever things in this new region. So yeah, I absolutely restrict access to things based on where the players are, where they start, and where they're going.
All right. Well, yeah, I can verify that out just about right. So what about you, Shadow?
Well, honestly, it depends. If I was playing AD&D, first or second edition, nah, run whatever you want. I don't care. I may not like your choices, but I'm not running the character, and I strongly believe that the players should have, the most choices when it comes to making a character. What do you want to play? I don't want hand you out a pre-made and you go, oh, I hate this character, I don't want to play it. And I want you to enjoy the game. That's what it's all about. I want you to come up with a character. What do you want to run? I almost want you to run your dream character. The more you like that character, the better a player you're going to be, the better you're going to be able to role play that character, as per, a friend of ours who really pushes that sort of play, which I really want to see more of. But now I do play or run a lot of Palladium. There's some characters in there that I'm not real fond of, and I might maybe be inclined to say no, but for me, it really boils down to: do I know do I know everything about that character, profession, or race, to where I'm not like going, "What? I didn't know they could do that." If I know the kind of character you're going to run, then what's the problem? I can work my way around anything. I've said before, if somebody wanted to run Jesus Christ, okay, not obviously we'd have to be running a pretty high-powered game, like a first-level Immortals game or something like that. Okay, cool. Let's see how you do it.
Maybe.
Yeah, I know. I'm using this as the most exaggerated example possible. Okay,
I'm Catholic, so I'm like working this out in my head. How would I play Jesus?
You want, if I've had characters, or excuse me, players want to run the equivalent of Superman or Batman or the Flash in my superhero games, and I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the rules, see what we can do. Within the character build situation, you can get obviously. Hold on, Sean. I'll hit you up. I'll get you an answer in just a second. If first level starting rules for a superhero game can get you close, then that's what you get. I'm not going to, well, you only get 3 powers in this game, but you need 7. No, sorry, you're only getting 3. Later on, you might get more, but let's work within. This is what first level is. If I'm running a game where you get to start out higher level, then same thing will work, within that system. But if I were ever to run Pathfinder or D&D some other edition, I would need a whole lot of time to learn all the rules, because from what I've seen from Pathfinder, etc., man, that's a steep learning curve. I could see how, if I had the book in my hand and my players all had the book, it'd be like, okay, give me 6 months, or let one of you guys dungeon master, because from what I've seen, I've got the 2nd edition Pathfinder book. It's like this thick. And if I take out all the BS in some of my old AD&D books, and condensed it, I'd be looking, a half inch thicker or thinner, in information. And yeah, I got a whole lot of info, in my head, and magazines and things like that. Core rule book versus core rule book. The player's handbook is, 100 and some odd very widely spaced pages compared to, that wouldn't even fit in the first 50 pages of Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So, if I don't know the game, then, we're going to have to take it slow, or you're going to have to come back, in 6 months when I'm ready. And chances are I would have forgotten that we were having a game, because, if I need that long to learn the system, it's probably a pretty hardcore system that I'm going to need to really work at learning. And Sean just asked, what kind of Palladium game am I running? I'm running the most insane game you can imagine. I use every book. I have a galaxy that has hundreds of thousands, if not millions of worlds. Every world could be a world book. Any player could come from any possible location. I let my players actually pick a profession out of any book, and then I let them have superpowers on top of that. Because my galaxy is very, very similar to what was that book we were talking about? Dragonstar?
Yeah.
It's basically a universe where magic, psionics, superpowers, and high technology all coexist. It's very, very extremely, insanely gonzo. Anything goes. I mind you, these players have been through a lot, and new players would probably be a little overwhelmed with all their choices and possibilities. but the threats, challenges, and dangers would be probably a lot more than most people were used to. I've played so much as a dungeon master that the more mundane things absolutely bore me to death. If any of you guys know what Keep on the Borderlands is, I've run it, 20 times minimum. If I never run it again, that will be fine. I will never look back and go, God, I wish I could run a first level. No, I don't. We were talking, I think, I forget who we were talking about. The sweet spot for me is, ninth, 10th level for most of my games. Wherever you start getting property and followers and servants and henchmen and things like that, domain play, a lot of people call it. That's where I really start to really show my skills as a dungeon master and where I want my players to be, provided they've earned it, unless we just start a game like that. I really want games that are unlike anything I know of or run before or think I could possibly purchase, in the way of a module or something like that. I don't want to be bored when I'm doing this. And a lot of the things that I see people do would bore the hell out of me because, I've dungeon mastered so much. So I see things coming when I'm watching other people play. I'm like, okay, it's a little too predictable. Fortunately, with Bruce's game, I'm just going to say it's not been predictable because it's a whole different game system. So I have no idea what's going to happen. We're fighting things that I'm like, oh, these should be no problem. They got that many points? Really? Really? Wow, back in the day, they'd have like 20. And I've done 50, and they're still not dead. So it's at that point, at the very least, it's different, challenging, and, I expect my paladin to go out, in a blaze of glory every single combat because I have no idea what to expect. And that, for me, that is refreshing as well.
Now, I'm going to respectfully disagree with one aspect of something you said about the knowing all of the rules of a set system. I respectfully disagree because really the only thing you need to know is typically in the first 20 pages of the book. And that is how the system is meant to be played. It's the core mechanics. That's all you truly need to know, even as a game master. You don't need to know all the individual minutia rules to play the game. Will it be surprising and difficult when someone goes, oh, hey, I'm going to do a backflip, stab the guy in the head, and then sweep the legs out from under him? If the rules allow that, yeah, it's going to be jarring at first when you first see it. But then as you get experience with those game rules and start deep diving into those rules, you can see how everything flows. But being a person who has read 15 unique systems and only really run 4, maybe 5 different systems, all I really need is how the game is actually played at the very beginning. I don't need to dive into the minutia of it until I'm actually playing or until, something happens in a night and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to circle back to that, over the weekend. I'm going to read through the rules and see what happens. And then, in the moment, I'm going to make a snap decision of, okay, yeah, you can do that this time. Here's the difficulty or the target you need to hit to do that. We'll see what happens. But after something like that happens, I will go read through all the minutia around that one thing to make sure I know for the next game that I am prepared for when that comes up again.
It's not a combat thing for me. It's actually more of what the player characters can make. Okay. I've noticed a lot of characters being able to whip up magic items that, I'm not stingy when it comes to magic items, but I would rather them buy, which I know people hate letting people buy magic items, because then I know what they're buying. Okay. And I can say no or yes. But when they're going in like, well, I can make this or I can make that. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I feel about that.
But I mean, even at the core of the game, just to be able to run the game, all you need to know is the core mechanics. You don't need to
Oh,
know all the character options.
yeah, yeah, I could see that. Oh, yeah, that's what I should have clarified. I don't care what they do in combat. I'll just add a 0 to their hit points
Yeah,
in the
pretty
middle
much.
of in the middle of combat. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, the monster's
if it
dead when
if it seems
you
like it's
say the
going too
monster's
fast,
dead.
if combat seems like it's going too fast, I'll add a 0 or a 2. I've done it before. I'll do it again. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
talking to
As
my
you,
son about that the other day. He's like, "You haven't done that to me, have you?" I'm like, "You'll never know." It combat to me should be more about I want the players to be at about like 5 hit points when the combat is over. So I'm really only keeping track of their hit points, not the monsters.
that's fair. I mean,
No,
I
it's
like
not.
it. No, to me, that's fair only because how should I put this? It is as I've had a couple DMs I've taken some skills from, and the way how I DM. Jade being one of them, and Jade's absolutely right. The monster falls down when the DM wants the monster to fall down, and
Yeah.
to the most part. But I want my players to run through their not rations, but their equipment. The archer, I want the archer to be worrying. It's like, well, I gotta make more arrows, so I need either a short rest or I need to go recycle some arrows. Or the fighter's like, I need this or need that. Just go through their resources, that at the end of the day, at the end of the combat, not even at the end of the combat, but at the end of the session, I want the players to do a quick bit of note taking to see how much resources they have left, how many health potions, how many arrows, how many of this, how many of that, because then you're starting to actually not test, trial, no, make the character think, okay, what am I going to do next? How am I going to handle this? I got X amount of spells. I only have three level spells. And unless we get another 8 hour rest between now and then, what's going to be put in front of me where I'm going to have to blow through these spells? It being healing or let's say third level fireball, because
So
everybody loves fireball.
you guys have both seen the Princess Bride, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. The
good
the
movie.
the line from Andre the Giant just ran through my head. I don't want them to die embarrassed.
Yeah.
I want my players to feel like they almost died regardless of whether they did or not, and I want them to feel like they did well as also. I don't want them to think they killed the monster too easily, but I don't want them to think that they stood no chance, depending on whether they stood no chance or not. If I warn them, you guys should think about getting the hell out of here. It's an ancient red dragon in your first level, and they say, nah, we can handle it. Well, then that's on them. But if but one of my big bads is the first round he's got 10 hit points left, that nobody's going to want to talk about that battle as much as, we were down to 3 hit points and 5 hit points, but we finally did it versus, yeah, this giant ancient red dragon came at us and we killed him in 2 rounds. That's no story. That reflects poorly on everybody. And I just don't want that sort of thing to happen.
Well, I don't know
Hey,
about ancient red dragon, but I know how to use how to deal with the younger red dragon. I have this wand, and just pray that I roll another nat 20, and the DM rolls another nat 1. Um. Okay. So since magic items got brought up, I think magic items are very can be considered very important, especially in homebrew and in modules. Sometimes they're the whole MacGuffin. You have to go here to get this, so it's the only way to slay X, Y, or zombie.
mhm.
For whatever reason. Now, with magic items, do you let your players create them? Do you rather them them buy it. I mean, I know, Shadow, you just said you'd rather have your characters buy it so you have a general idea what they have and how it works.
Yep.
So I guess the question is, are you wholly opposed? Are you okay or indifferent to the magic items and how they are created or bought or sold in your world?
Well, in the old days, it was a lot. I know people say they make it difficult, but what they meant by making it difficult was in the old days, you could not even make a magic item unless you had the spell enchant item. Without it, you couldn't do it. So it was entirely on me whether they could or not. Now it seems no such spell exists, and they can pretty much,
It's all feats.
dictate. Yeah, I'm not okay with that until I know a little bit more about how that works. Also, in the old days, you obviously, I could dictate what ingredients they needed, and certain things, potions and scrolls, really no stopping that. That's fine. It's just more charges of a spell. I'm work and think, well, I'm going to need 6 teleports to do this thing. Okay, well, you're doing the work. I know it's teleport, but you're doing the work and you're figuring out what you need. That's good. But if they're telling me they're making, a wand of destruction with 70 charges of this spell and 40 charges of that spell, and they're not doing anything until it's done, and they're going to sit in their wizard's tower until they've spent the number of days it takes to put those charges in that item. I'm like, ugh. Okay, well, your tower gets hit by lightning, and I don't want them telling me how things are going to be. They can get on their hands and knees and beg. That's fine. That's on one way. But I really don't want to give them that much power until they've really earned it. Once, mind you, I've had players create things scarier than that. But they were, they've been playing 10 years and they've got this character who's, super powerful, has all the, done all the work, so things like that were like, that's all you did? Oh, okay. You could have, I would have done, I would have done this. I would have done that. Okay. That's all you did. Okay, cool. Let's play next week and you'll have said item ready to go. I like giving out magic items. I've made some insane magic items. I've given out a coffin of infinite vampires. Every time you open the door, a new vampire pops out.
Oh God. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry. I just fuck.
Yes, please give me more ideas.
I one of my because I run a high tech and magic thing. One of the things I hand out pretty often are instead of boat of folding, I've given out hover limousines of folding, attack helicopters of folding, X-wing fighters, things like that. You pull it out of your pocket, throw it, boom, it turns into your vehicle. That's nothing, But they were just like, really? Yeah, sure, why not? I'll make some pretty cool.
One of my favorite weapons.
I like mixing the two genres a lot. For me, that's the most bang for my buck as a DM. I get to play every game at once, so to speak. So when I make up a magic item, trust me, you'll remember that magic item, or maybe a list of magic items if you're in a campaign. And I don't mind handing out a lot of them. We've had games where the treasure pile that the players just got was pages, and the next gaming session would just be, okay, it's your turn to pick. Okay, it's your turn to pick. And that's all they would do all night is go through the treasure list, taking turns on who gets to pick the next item off the list. And, I put it on the list, I can handle it. It's not like I went through a module, I found this crazy item. I'm like, oh my God, that's world breaking. There's no such thing really in my game. So have at, they'll just go to another world. They'll just go to another world.
Well, and that's the other thing. Modules give like all of the items that the players are supposed to get per combat. Like that's just one of the things modules do.
Yep.
And while I do try to stick to that when I do run modules, I will say, okay, here's what the treasure is. I've already pulled the treasure out. I've already got it on a spreadsheet or something that players can access online and pick and choose what they want, and that's all well and good. But anytime the players go, oh hey, what does this thing do, and I read it and I'm like, oh hey, that's kind of game breaking. Like it breaks the game, not the world. Like it does something to the game rules that like makes an infinite power combo. At least that's what they think it does. It doesn't necessarily have to do that. As the GM, as the person who is adjudicating the rules of the game, and being the person who's telling the story, I can say a magic item does whatever I want it to do. I don't have to say, oh yeah, that's a wand of fireball. No, that's a wand that shoots fireballs or fire of some kind. You're not exactly sure what it is because you don't recognize the spell that's in it or the combination they're in.
You see that you guys don't actually have the old identify spell then.
Oh, they do.
Oh, okay.
But the identify spell in Paizo, and you'll find this later out in Bruce's game, it doesn't work the same as like the old identify spell, where it doesn't just identify things immediately. It can be used for that, but you actually use I think it's a knowledge arcana check to identify the properties of a magic item now. But if you fail the check once, if you just fail the check once, you don't get to check again until you either level up or it does something so incredibly different than what you were expecting. Then you might get another chance to see what it is. That's in Pathfinder, and technically 3.5.
That's not all that different. That's not all that different. But I see how because in the old days, the rules assumed that it was going to be a long time before the dungeon master started making up magic items. So he was just going to use the standard 182 magic items in the dungeon master's guide, and that would be it for a while.
Oh, but the imagination is so much more in depth than that.
Yeah. Thank God too, because it would get boring after a while, and thank God again it didn't, because people would not have made second edition or any other edition after that, or any other products after that. It would have just died at an early death. And I'm glad that never happened.
But no, as far as magic items go, module play, they include a list of items that are supposed to be within the game or within the that campaign or module. As far as homebrew games go, when I make magic items, sometimes I will take in consideration the player wish list. And, that's one of those things I say, during the start of an arc, say, hey, give me a wish list of what your character is looking for to enhance or looking to build upon. Or, if they don't give me anything, I'm like, okay, let me see your character sheet. Let me decide kind of what to lay out in the field, so to say, for you to pick. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I see a character is, really doing this one thing, but they're not doing it well, I might make an item that helps them out. I'm not going to just let someone struggle bus their entire way through a game, because it's not fun to struggle bus. It really isn't.
And then you lose players.
Right. And Connell, you've been in some of my games, and I have seen where your characters have struggled in the past, and I have laid items out in the field without any names attached to those items and let the players decide who gets what. And I hope I've done a good job at making items that enhance what characters or what players have already built.
Yeah, no. In the past, when if it being the 15 minutes in the Crash the Titans where Zeus says, give him stuff, and it magically appears on the field from battle. I appreciate whatever you get. You've given us the party in the past.
Don't you hate though when somebody else gets that item that you made for somebody else? They didn't pick it, and then somebody else grabs it.
I've
had players that went out of their way to do shit like that.
There's
a staff. I'm taking a staff, but you're not a wizard.
we could sell this, and the party can have money. I could really use that item. Yeah, but do you have money? Do you have the money to pay the party for it? But we found it off a corpse.
Well,
Yep.
and that's the other aspect of it. Is, okay, so if the party, and this gets into the other minutia of game mastering is, if a party is really hell bent on going, well, we really need money. Well, why do why does the party need money? Should be the GM's question. Now, if they're doing it just to power build, well, okay, that's one thing. But if the party's like, hey, we can sell this item, but the one player's like, but I could really use that item. The players should, now this is me speaking to players, you should be working with your fellow players as a team. To me,
Oh yeah.
a hobby is not a solo player game. There's not one main character in the game. You're all the main character. The main character is the party, not just one person in the party. You should be working together as a team, not against one another. However, there is one caveat to that. If there is one player who has already spoken to and worked with the GM that character is technically a villain or a spy for a villain, then that player can covertly work against the party in certain ways. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying it shouldn't happen typically unless there is that kind of scenario.
And even then, it should be the dungeon master's idea, not the player's idea, because those kind of players are nothing but trouble.
I would say if a player comes to me and says, hey, I want to work against the party in a unique way, I'm going to set the limitations on what they can work against the party in what way, and I'm going to give them the instructions.
Right, but imagine being the other players in the party, finding out that not only is the DM doing that with another player, but the player is actively the whole time been against the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. That's asking for actual physical violence outside the game room at the end of the night when they find out. I would not blame a party for taking somebody outside, beating the crap out of them, then going in and telling the dungeon master, we're done. We hope we never see you again. I would not hold it against them for doing that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of work that the GM has to put in to pull that off.
Me and you both in that campaign.
Yeah, make sure nobody ever finds out.
There, Jade. Me and you both have been in that campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was the villain.
No, I was thinking when it was a husband-wife show.
Yeah, I was the villain.
No,
I was the secret villain the entire time. No one ever knew.
No, my favorite. And this is just. I don't mind gaming with married couples. I don't mind DMing for married couples. But when there should not be any, favoritism between the husband and wife.
I'll agree with that. A DM should never play favorites. I think we've kind of gone off topic here, but I will agree with this. DM should never play favorites with anyone at the table. And yes, some people might disagree with me on that, but here's why you're wrong. If you play favorites, the players who are not the favorites are going to get upset. They are going to leave, or they're going to say you're a shit GM and walk away anyway.
Yeah.
Sexual
anyways, okay, so
that's not the same thing as DM. That's not the same thing as DM bribes. DM bribes are.
Oh boy!
If you let your players know that you will accept DM bribes, then that's up to them to take it how they see fit. If they're too cheap to bribe you, then that's their problem. But they should not be upset when other people bribe you, saying it is in fact a bribe, because sometimes a DM's got to eat.
Yeah, it was what was the old line we used to say? Bribe the DM, go up a level.
Yes, that was God, that was a meme from like the early 2000s. Bribe the GM and go up a level. Yeah, I remember that.
All right, back on
How did
topic.
they spell that?
What?
Huh?
How did they spell that?
Bribe the GM and go up a level.
Yeah, how did they spell bribe?
Standard. Just
B
regular
R I
bribe.
D. BRID,
No,
Brian.
never mind.
I know what you're getting at.
Pride. Marry the DM, go up a level. Gotcha. Okay, magic. I like magic shops. I really do like magic shops. I'm not saying every small Thorpe village or small town has a magic shop. They might have a magic user that has trinklings he's picked up that he's willing to sell, but he's not the target Walmart of magic shops. He's the general store, sorta, kinda, of the magical shop world.
It all depends on what part. Yeah, it all depends on the. Sorry, I'm doing something weird here. It depends on the town, or the location. And the world. A lot of people say they want low magic worlds. Well, if you got a low magic world, then you really should be open to the idea of technology replacing or evolving. If you've got a high magic world, then high magic better be available. Otherwise, it's not a high magic world. It's just your NPCs having all the magic, and the players get bupkis.
I like. I mean, as a DM, as a player, more than a DM. As a player, I like a good 50-50 mix. Sometimes, but that's just me. But not every campaign is going to be that way.
It's just another way to spend their money for them. That way you don't have to feel like you're handing out magic items. They're buying them with the treasure you've given them, and sometimes it's actually, better for the campaign if because, for example, in low-level games, if the player character party doesn't have a cleric, then it's incumbent on you to give them opportunities to heal, and by handing out potions, as every time they find magic, there's healing potions. That demeans the healing potion to an extent. But in other situations, let them buy them. That way they can keep a better track of how much they can handle, and then it's up to them to get the hell out of the dungeon because there's no more healing.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, as I was saying, I don't. I like having. I mainly like I said, I like a 50-50 blend. And so when I am a DM for modules, with Rise of the Rune Lord, Pathfinder is a high magical world. It is just the way. And I have had a few players is like, I want to do the 5e version of Gunslinger, which is the Artificer. I'm like, you might bounce into one in a Metropolis. You're not going to find one at Sandpoint. Well, where's the next Metropolis? Hundreds of miles that direction. Are we going anywhere near it? Yes, but not when you want to. And he's like, so I can play Alchemist. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, only if your character dies.
You're not, only in my like higher, timeline games do I allow something like the Seers and Warlock catalog. And what I mean by that is the magic item compendiums or equipment guides. I call those the Seers and Warlocks catalog.
Like Seers and Roguelike.
Because, right.
Yeah.
But I for my later games where, you have access to these huge cities and rail lines and, mass, supply and demand chains and shipping lines, you have access to buy anything, but you won't have access to that until you're like 12th, 15th, 20th, 40th level. Like that's when you actually have access to all of the shipping, in the world. So that's when I start allowing players, just choose something out of the Seers and Warlock catalog and you can probably find it. You just have to pay to get it. I'm not going to restrict magic items, so to say, to a extreme limiting point, but at the same time, it's really level dependent. I'm not going to give a level 3 wizard a staff of the Magi. Like that's just not going to happen. One, they can't afford it. Two, they can't use it. They don't understand enough how to use it. And 3, there's no reason for them to have an item like that yet.
No, and I agree. So when they get to Metropolis and they find their Sears, they find their, the Kmart of Magic, uh, the Kmart Magic, they're already 10th to 15th level anyways. And I don't even give them full access to everything that's in the damn book because, well, I'm not an idiot. I will do a percentage roll. Just something
Also even in 3.5 and Paizo both, you have gold spending limits based on city size. So as long as the items, the magic items don't total over a certain amount, per city size, they have access to,
So you don't ruin the economy?
Yes, it's partially that. It's also partially the fact that it's just a set limit of like, here's the maximum amount of items, gold total wise, that a player can find and reasonably get access to. It's in the DMG. It just plain text. You don't want to go over that limit.
That's I've never seen anything like that in any of my books, but. Okay, I can deal with that.
With 5e, the magic items don't have prices. They go common, uncommon, common, uncondom. Guess where my mind's at? Uncommon.
Your mind has never left there.
Rare and legendary, and I just base it off of that. If they're asking for common items, the Sears and Warlock will have it. If they're asking for, even at the Mom Paws General Market, they might have one magical item that's common out of, maybe one out of what everybody's asking for. Because so there's no price limit. I'm not putting a legendary weapon in the Mom Paw General Store. Well, I did, but my players never knew. So, because I figure a legendary weapon is something ancient or it's an artifact that it's been hanging on the wall since great grandfather put it up there. No one knows exactly what it is anymore.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
So, and what was that? The Sword of the Avenger.
So I don't know if you can read it.
Hold on.
Not a word of it. Not a word of it.
There we go.
It's still totally blurry for me.
Yeah, okay. So this is page 137 of the D&D 3.5 Dungeon Master's Guide. And each one of those listing is Thorpe, Hamlet, Village, Small Town, Large Town, Small City, Large City, Metropolis. They all have population sizes and they all have spending limits. Like you cannot spend more than 3,000 gold pieces in a large town. And the reason for that, again, is they just can't generate those kind of items or that kind of wealth of stuff, and that's because of population size, and it's supposed to make common sense. Now, if you want to throw this book out the window, go for it. If you want, high money in your game, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to stop you. At the same time, if you want zero money in your game, your players are going to probably rebel.
That's how Murdering Hobos got created. That's honestly how Murdering Hobos probably got created. The DM did not want to give out any damn money. So fine, we'll take it.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a mix of both, but yeah, absolutely. As far back as the original Monster Manual, there were these things called treasure types, and they gave you percentage chances of what kind of treasure. Any player who's played more than a couple of years probably picked up a Monster Manual, probably studied the treasure types and the percentages, and maybe even made some notes in their Monster Manual to get an idea of what they could expect from killing said monsters, just to know, is it worth it? Maybe part of the murder hobo process, but there should be a reward for every kill, so to speak, whether it be XP, progress in the game, or some sort of monetary compensation. Otherwise, it's just endless combat just to stay alive. Which I've run games like that before. Or at least parts of games like that where they're on the run. You might kill stuff, but you're not getting anything, and you better save what you have because everybody's out to get you, kind of thing. They put themselves in that position. You reap what you sow.
All right. I guess here's the thing, though. Going with the magic, still staying in the realm of the topic I brought up with magic items. Now, when you're first or second level and you fight a horde of goblins, to first or second level it's a bit much, and they're going to have goblin-ish things. They might have the shinies, they might have the things that look like jewels, but they're realistically not going to have any magic because realistically, unless you have a bard or a shaman in it. But even if it's their magic, doesn't mean you might have access to it.
I disagree. I think for me, it kind of doesn't matter what kind of monster it is. If they fight 100, let's say, goblins, there's a party of 4, and they kill 100 goblins.
Right.
Okay. In, let's say, a night.
That's a long night.
If they find where they keep their treasure, or if they just pile up the bodies and search them one by one, they're probably going to find some stuff. Now, maybe it might just be a potion that tastes nasty or things like that, or they might actually find a couple +1 daggers, maybe a +1 short sword, maybe some plus arrows, because who knows what these goblins killed before they met the party.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's entirely possible they ambushed an entire caravan and just made bank. I may have written that into the story. I may use that as justification, but it really depends on what they just fought. Okay, maybe they just killed a couple of displacer beasts. Maybe they find one of the previous victims of the displacer beast, and it's got something cool on it.
Well,
maybe it's a monster that can't use magic, but it still hoards it.
Right? Yeah. No.
There's also nothing saying that after slogging through 100, over 100 goblins in a infested cave, you get back to town. You don't find anything in the goblin cave, but when you get back to town and you've got the left ear of every goblin you killed, the town goes, "That's awesome. We're gonna pay you now." And that's how you can get items.
That's an interesting way of doing it. Make the party think like they got shortchanged, but then see, to my group, they would think that was just me feeling bad that I didn't give them anything, so now I'm giving them something. You know what I mean?
There's definite,
my players are pretty jaded.
Risk reward kind of things.
Okay, fine, give us stuff now. That would be the attitude of my group.
I think it's all about the setup. If the setup of the hook is okay, hey, we've got a goblin infestation. We don't think it's too bad, but we want some adventurers to go check it out. And the adventurers slog through 10 levels of absolute hell, and they get back to town. They're gonna be like, "What the hell? You said it wasn't a bad infestation. We just killed over 100 goblins. What the hell?" It's like, "Oh, wait, you did what?" And they send someone to confirm, or, that you bring back, like I said, the left ear of every goblin. They're going to be like, "That was more than what was supposed to be there. Here, we're going to give you a bigger reward, and we're going to upgrade your adventuring class to the next tier so you can start taking the bigger jobs that pay more." So excelling and going above and beyond is kind of in the adventuring title. You are this intrepid hero. You shouldn't expect every job to be easy. Granted, if you go above and beyond, you probably should expect more in reward. Now, that reward could come in the dungeon where you find the monsters to slay.
Unless you're Kai and you've got a horrible DM, because he tends to have those experiences.
Apparently.
Speaking of Kai, if he's watching, I want to know when this horrible experience has happened, because as far as I know, he's the forever DM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also agree with Omanel here. All, players get accolades. They treasure is not just gold pieces and magic items. That's not just all the treasure a player can get. They can get land. They can get followers. They can get so many more things than just gold. Now most players would be like, well, why do I want a bunch of followers? Why do I want land? Now I've got to spend money to upgrade the land. Now I've got to pay taxes. Now I've got to do this and that and the other thing. But what they don't realize is how they can use their followers, how they can use their land to their advantage. If
I
the
think in
player's
the early
willing,
levels, I think in the early levels, some of those things you just mentioned might be better saved for later. Just
sure,
you said ears, goblin ears, and it's been a thing here recently where the players start cutting off goblin ears, and me as a DM, I haven't said anything about goblin ears being a ward. And I ask what the player says, what are you doing? I'm collecting goblin ears. Why? Take back to town. I'm sure there's a bounty on them. Without me saying a damn word. Without, it's like, oh, I guess I'm adding that into the module because that wasn't part of it, but makes sense. I'll go with it. Why not?
And that's where home brewing and module play can really be expanded upon. It's like the GM may have not thought of, oh hey, the player goes, hey, there might be a bounty on whatever thing we're hunting. And the GM goes, okay, sure, there's a bounty on it. Now you can write in a reward for that. So, I mean, GMs have to be flexible, be it module play or homebrew play. You have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to take what your players say and use it. If players are thinking outside the box, congratulate them. Reward them for thinking outside the box, not just
otherwise they'll stop doing it. They'll clam up and stop doing it, and it'll just be, a miniature war game as opposed to a role playing game.
But sometimes a bad idea is a bad idea, like sticking a feather token of anchor onto an arrow and shooting it, hoping it was going to drag the son of a bitch down into the ground because it just went through the ribs and just flew on down, hit the ground, poof, anchor. But but it's a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Reward creativity, be it, module play, be it homebrew play, always reward creativity. If a player comes up with a unique way of doing something, or a unique way of circumnavigating a encounter, be it, a social encounter, a combat encounter, reward that play. Encourage that kind of play.
I completely agree. I think when it comes to magical items, there is a time and place for all magical. I started with goblins because the goblins and kobolds are normally what you square off in the very beginning of the gaming. Maybe an orc or two, but normally the gobos or something not as bad. I said I guess it was an interview with DM James because DM James interviewed me on this past weekend on his channel. He asked me what was one of my favorite monsters. And for a DM, I look sending out the Great Render. Great Render has no treasure. All it does goes out there, eats trees. It's a herbivore. It will kill things. But for the most part, the way I've always read it, it was a herbivore. And if I have a party out and just walking down a road to get from point A to point B, because that's normally 9 out of 10 times what they're doing is walking down the damn road. I'll just push out a Gray Render. I'll make one appear in the road. He's on the side of the road eating a tree, just watching him, because a Gray Render by alignment does not give a shit. He's neutral. It is neutral. And if you got a party, it's like, oh, it's a monster. I will go kill. I have to go kill it. I know what kind of party I have in my hand. They're not going to get any. They're going to get minor XP and no loot. Congratulations, you basically killed an anteater. Let's push on the murdering hobo train elsewhere. If they stop and the druid or ranger is like, hey, big guy, how are you doing? I also know what kind of party I have. Because you can turn a Gray Render in. You can't technically, but I've read in a few places that you can have a Gray Render bond with a druid or a ranger or somebody in the party. and it becomes not a companion in the same way that a ranger has its special companion, but it becomes a follower of sense. So when it comes to magic and money, I just kind of like to know what kind of party I have. So I'll set out the gray render. And because, as I said, it's true neutral. It does not give a shit about you unless you hurt it.
Mm-hmm.
And that will also let you know what kind of party you have. Now, when you're up there in levels, let's say most campaigns crap out at 15. I don't like 15 as a crap out. I like 20 as a crap out. It just feels more. 15 to me, level 15 is more, even for homebrew and module. 15th level is the climax. It's coming to head. It's not quite there yet, but we're now reaching the top of the hill. And you have 5 more levels to get there. Then there's the drop, or, the steady decline. So with magic shops, magic in a whole, I like time and place. If you are level 15 and a goblin has stolen something, and for some odd reason, the only way to deal with this mayor is to go receive his mom's pearl necklace that a bunch of goblins ran off, and you have to go do it. XP to a 15th level character is not going to mean shit. It's gold or treasure heads is really not going to mean shit, because you probably have that times over. But I also like to see what the party does. If they're reluctant, then I don't punish them for it, but things become a tad bit harder. Like they don't get, not percentages off, but the hotel they were staying at has told them, we needed the room. Sorry, unless you're willing to pay more, you got to go. Or the guards in the city are not as nice to them as they were yesterday. There's some kind of fallout because they're being greedy, or if they did the right thing. And I think magic items are a good also way to see what kind of party you have, like the Great Render. Because the pearls are actually pearls of power, but the mayor did not know it. He's like, "Oh, I didn't know. Thank you for thank you for bringing them back," and gives them to the party as a reward. Because for whatever reason. So that's my idea with magic. That's how I like to use magic items in modules and in homebrew. We did villains. We did magic. Rule creation.
Well, we didn't get shadows.
I'm looking at the time. I'm doing that the last 10.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Last 10 minutes. I have a schedule in my head. If it works out, it's a wonderful thing. If it doesn't, it's just Wednesday night with me.
Get on with it.
World building. Modules have the world built out. That is the benefit of modules. You can add things, but everything is basically laid out. For you homebrewers, do you take hours and days to scope the perfect world, or do you just let it unfurled as it happens?
Who wants to answer first?
You.
Okay. Oh man. Okay, so for any new homebrewers out there who want to dabble into the realms of world building, yay, go for it. Start small. Focus in on the area where you want your players to start. Expand out from that in whatever direction the players are wanting to go. Don't be like me, where I have planned for the last 10 years every minutia of the world itself. Like, I have the planet, I have the continents, the continental plates, and how they move, and the weather patterns. I have all of that stored up here. Why? Because I have the time to do it, or at least I did have the time to do it. I planned and planned and planned, and I know, based on where, like, what continent, what country, what city a player starts in, what's around the area. I've got it all mapped out in my head. I've also got it mapped out elsewhere, like Google Drive and other places. But you can do that to that extreme. You can get into
You'll end up with one of these.
Yes. I have a world book. It's
Hmm.
about 5
There's a glare on that.
gigabytes worth of data. Yeah, like that book is maybe 2 gigs worth of data. My Google Drive is like 6 or 7 gigabytes of world building data currently. That's how in depth I went into the world. Like I have the map, I have, the religions, I have the countries, the peoples of said religions and countries. I've got their worship patterns, what their star constellations mean to them. I have all of that planned out, and you can do that if you want. It takes time. It takes years of time sometimes to do that, but you don't have to. You start small, start focused in on just where you want your players to start. And from there, you can continue building. That's how I started. I started with just the one country and then built out from there. So yes, I enjoy world building. It's one of my favorite things to do. Is how does the world work? Why does the world work? How does magic work in the world? Why? What powers the magic in the world? So that's how I get into world building.
All right, Shadow.
Everything he just said, focus on one map page at a time. Because if you draw what's to the north, but they go south, you wasted your time. As they go south or west or east, draw the map out and improvise the whole time. And if it matters, write it down. If they're never coming back to this town again, it doesn't matter. It's like the old, if a tree falls in the forest. Well, if they never go south, nobody cares what's in the south. But one thing I will add, while you're making up your world, think about what's outside that world. For example, does it have any moons? Are they explorable? Do you want to go that route? Well, what's your universe or solar system like? Are there other planets? Because sometimes those ideas will lead you into a traveler game. No, they will. You may want to play Spelljammer. You may want to, have other worlds that they will teleport to or portal to or whatever, however you do your far travels. You never know, because you might just end up wanting to put them in a new world. They go through a portal, now they're on another world because you didn't really like the first one, or they didn't like the first one, or maybe they want to play sliders and go from world to world to world and never see their home world again. I've got a party that has not seen their home world in probably 50 planet jumps that they've made, and it's not a traveler game. It's a D&D game. You might want to work on your outer planes, your elemental planes. I have an elemental plane that is where you go to buy magic items. There's an island mega center that's a super high-tech, magical, industrial, crazy place, but that's where they go to buy magic items, the really cool stuff. Or they have magic items made there. That's just how it rolls. And I mean, sure, you can make magic items anywhere, but if you want guaranteed, you want to buy a Staff of the Magi fully charged, you go to the elemental plane of water to a certain island, and they've got 50,000 of them there. But how high a level do you have to be able to get to the elemental plane of water and then find that island? That's up to, the DM. So think big and small at the same time, because you never know when things might go completely sideways and they end up on the third moon of your planet. And is it breathable? Is it survivable? Maybe it's a whole nother planet that's just really small. And there's all kinds of other cool stuff there, because no one ever does stuff like that I know. They stick to a world. They forget about the moons. They forget about the other planets in the solar system, when you could actually have a whole lot of fun with a whole lot of really weird stuff on that are nearby, but nobody actually knows about it. I've had Spelljammer war type games between different planets in the same solar system. They weren't coming from another dimension. They weren't coming from another continent. They're coming out of the skies, landing and attacking. But that's me. I run Gonzo.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
a great answer.
in my own homebrewed game world, like the reason magic works is the world itself, or the star system that the world exists in, is part of a stellar cluster where the exotic energies are malleable and harnessable. Like the exotic energies of the Big Bang and the stellar cluster allow for the peoples of the different star systems to be able to harness those exotic energies to do magic. That's to me where the magic comes from in my game world. It's not so much oh yeah, I just cast fireball, I cast telepathy. No, no, no. You're harnessing the very powers of creation. How you
Absolutely.
use them is how that the players are only limited by how they describe what they're doing with said powers. Like, do you have the powers of fire? Well, okay. How do you plan on using said powers of fire? How do you plan on using the powers of water? Describe to me what you want to do with the magic and roll for it. If you succeed, it happens. If you epically succeed, something unexpected might happen. If you utterly fail, expect universal backlash.
Okay. So with the last 10 minutes of this, oh, and I really don't have an answer for my last question because my role's basically drawn out for me, and uh, unless
You'll
something
get there.
major happens, I'm good.
You'll get
Uh,
there.
yeah. It's like, hey, I don't have to work on a map. It's already been drawn out, print out, and it's on roll 20. I'm good. So I have nothing to add for modules because most modules worlds are, mapped out for the most part. All right. So last question. We're circling back is villain craft in homebrew versus module. Now, me and Jade both have answered this to a certain degree. What is your answer when it comes to villainy and homebrewing? Where do you get your ideas from? How do you measure it out, and how do you employ it?
Well, I do a couple of things. One, I have to determine what kind of villain I need. I usually, whatever's going on is usually got one big guy at the top. It might be a dragon, it might be a lich, it might be a vampire, it might be a human who's just a jerk. Once I figured that out, then I work down the chain of command, so to speak. But usually it's one big guy, maybe a group of guys at the top. They can be girls too. I'm just and I go I either work my way down and they face minions until they get to the top. But once I've figured that out, I will often find somebody to channel. For example, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor in the old Superman movies. I have played super, or not super, but villains, let's say, as if I was pretending to be Gene Hackman in the Superman movies. I don't tell anybody who I'm channeling. I just do it. I just find some actor to, and it might not even be an actor. It might just be a character that an actor played, but I just try to do as much to sound and make myself feel like and get into the spirit of that particular person or character. Sometimes it's even just a comic book character, but usually I tend to go with actors because you can get a better connection and feel like that person and try to sound like that person. Even if you don't sound like that person, you've got sort of a template to go with to sort of mold that person, and then I'll make them my own. I will make them my own through constant use of that NPC and NPCs. When it comes to the villains, those are where you really get to shine as a, oh my god, as a dungeon master, playing those big guys, those Darth Vaders or Lex Luthors or whatever. That's where you really get to shine. You can run the best bartender every time they run a bar, they run into a tavern, they're not going to care. The players, they might, appreciate your skill as a NPC role player, but that's not who they're going to remember. Maybe someone saved their bacon, when they were down and out or something like that. They were nice to, but it's the big bad guys. That's where you shine as a DM. That's where you get them so emotionally involved in the game. They want to hate. They want to hate that guy. I was just watching some Venture Brothers lately. They want to hate their own, Rusty Venture, as it were, or their own monarch with an all-consuming hatred. And once that switch is flipped, you've got them. They're emotionally invested. They want to kill or destroy that son of a. And
no, I get it. That's awesome.
Find your muse, as it were. Channel the hell out of them. Hope they don't mind. If they do, I got a couple of double barrels for them that they can just, Sorry, right. But I'm using your personality, your soul. I'm taking a little bit of it and making it mine, and just enjoy it, because that's your chance to play, as it were, in the most profound way as a dungeon master. You're not going to get as much of a thrill out of playing, a paladin that comes along and saves their bacon. Maybe you will. Maybe you're that kind of guy. You want to play the Gandalf that comes in and saves them when they're all about to die. But let's face it, we're called dungeon masters. We're not called, the cavalry. We're supposed to be the Sauron. That's who they picture us as. We're the bad guy. We're not the benevolent Zeus up on Mount Olympus looking down and hoping they do well. We might be, we want to be our heart. We want to be like that, but that's not who they're ever going to think of us as. Maybe they will in the end when they're old and gray. Go, man, that guy was a great DM, or they're going to be like, curse you. I wish I could play again just so I could get you back. That's me.
I get that. I guess I want to add to that one is, remember, if you read your Greek mythology, Zeus is a dick too. He wasn't wholly good. He wasn't wholly bad. He was the guy in the middle fucking your wife.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
my son, we just watched both movies, and I wish I would have thought about that, because the little guy's a little skittish when it comes to stuff, but he's got to grow up someday. So as long as I'm there to help him, get through that.
In both those movies, he did it so well. They did it. They covered that. They brought that aspect to it, but they covered up it. They kidified it so well. All right. So last few minutes of the show, I want to thank Jade and Shadow for joining me in this last 2 hours of homebrewing versus module. Maybe we'll do the other way around. Maybe we'll put some more light on module play, but maybe with a different cast of people who do more module play than homebrew. I don't know how that's going to work out in the future, but it is what it is. Now, Jade, what do you got going on this week that you're willing to share with the class?
This week, I am heading out of town to go see my parents for Memorial Day weekend. So I'm not going to be available to do much of anything after Friday evening. So I will be around tomorrow for Table Riggers as usual. But I won't have recording time. May is just one of those months that's just absolute terrible for finding free time.
All right. Anything else?
That's it for me right now.
All right. Now, what about you, Shadow? I know we have some things that we're doing together.
Yeah, I'll be back here tomorrow with you guys for Table Breakers, talking about romance and, one of my favorite gaming subjects, which, this is why I picked it, because everybody else just gets that weird shudder and creepy feeling. But I'm going to make it not so awkward for you guys. I was supposed to put out a video today, but I forgot my son had graduation ceremony, and so that's why I was late here and why I didn't put out that video. I'm going to try and squeak it out tonight. If not, maybe tomorrow, and if not, um, we'll see. And then tomorrow, the little guy and I have a craft based on Clash of the Titans Thursday night. It's our craft night. Friday, I'll be back with another Arduin review, and then Sunday, the Cigar DM, the little guy and I will be talking Dresden for a couple of hours.
Yeah, review on the first book, Stormfront. For those who are not traveling that are part of gatekeepers or table breakers, please join us.
Yes. And I actually have the perfect game engine that I would use if I was going to run a Dresden game that's probably just tailor-made for it, maybe even inspired partially by it, but I'm going to save that for the episode, which will be Sunday at about 2 o'clock avocado time. I see Jade's gears moving up there. What he's
How
got
soon
some,
can I be back on Sunday now?
I'm not sure.
That's all right. We'll be doing it 4 o'clock p.m. our time and 2 o'clock avocado time. Now, I guess I should say what I'm up to. Tomorrow we're doing table breakers where me, Jade, Shadow, hopefully Baron, Bruce, and the almighty Rantosaurus, Kai, will be joining us.
We love you, Kai.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Much love, Kai. We'll be talking about the 7 story plots that we've been shuffling around the Earth since Pluto.
The dawn of time.
Dawn of time. Yeah, so we'll be talking about that. He's saying 10. I don't know. We'll find
That's
out.
what they taught me in college. I couldn't find my book on short stories, and I looked up 7, I looked up 10, and found out there's 20 or 30 or 40, depending on who you ask. So we're going to go with 7 because I don't think we could find 10 different dungeon masters to cover one each. So we might even have to do double duty.
Might be a two-part. It might be a 2-part night. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. Friday night, I will see. You might see me on next chill stream. Depends on what's the topic and what's going on. Bruce is Max is always a fun place to be.
Can't wait for that game.
Bruce is on Saturday. You'll see me, Shadow, on Bruce's campaign. Hopefully Jade at some point. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, because I don't want to play a wizard. Then Sunday, we will be talking about Dresden Files and Stormfront. And yes, I made the Sun and Shadow and Sun read Stormfront this week. I don't know how he's going to pull it off, but I have faith in the little man. With that being said, everybody here have a good evening, a good night, and all that. Remember to do your character sheet in crayon and roll your dice in the dark. Good night, everybody.
Bye.